As we move on in hatch phases on Callibaetis, as I move away from cripples and onto duns, the next fly I'm going to tie is just a regular style Callibaetis parachute pattern. And I'm going to use another whiting material for the tail on this pattern. I've got some a Coq de Leon saddle, and down toward the base of this saddle I've got just a few more tan feathers with lots of speckling. Coq de Leon is super for tailing because it is more stiff than almost any other hackle that we produce, and so it really provides super support for the fly. I might also use, instead of a full-blown saddle, I might use a whiting tailing pack. And let me go grab one and I'll show you that one. I also often use a whiting tailing pack. And this, again, is Coq de Leon. And again, these barbs are quite a bit stiffer. So when I'm fishing dry flies for tailing material, that's going to really help support the fly on the water. You can see some of this material, just the strength of the barbs, and really does a nice job of tying tails on mayflies. Now fishing. Fishing the dun pattern. I just showed you a cripple, and I've got a dun here. The dun pattern and cripples and ultimately spinners are often on the water at the same time. And so when I fish Callibaetis, 9 times out of 10 I'm fishing a dry in tandem. I put a dropper fly of usually my cripple pattern, and I might use the dun as the top fly. And I give them a choice. Some fish get very selective in their feeding behaviors, and they're going to feed strictly on cripples or on duns or on spinners. And so if I offer 2 different stages of the insect on the end of my fly line, I double my chances of having a fish take. And so often I'll fish dry in tandem, and I might fish a dun and a spinner. I might fish a dun parachute and a cripple. I mix it up a little bit, just depending on what the trout want on that given day. So we're going to move on down the hatch cycle just a little bit beyond the cripple stage. I'm now going to move into and tie a Callibaetis parachute mayfly dun pattern and show you how I do it. There are lots of different ways to tie parachute patterns, but I'll show you what I learned years ago and how I tie them. I'm going to start by selecting out some material for the wing, and I'll clean that well. I'm going to throw away probably half of the material, half of the under fur, and okay, let's stack that hair in my hair stacker. So you can see that coming out of my stacker a whole lot cleaner as I stack all those tips. I'm going to tie that on right at the wing set position. I'll wind through the butts and trim off the excess, and then I'll wind over those butts and I'll leave a little goiter, and I'll show you how to repair that here in a few minutes as we tie the rest of the fly. So then I'm going to stroke all this material back, and I'll build a small little cone in front of, and I'll drive some wraps of thread right into the base of that to try and set it upright. And next, I'm going to post that. So I'm going to take some relatively soft wraps. You can see how I've got my bobbin oriented. I can make these wraps really soft, and I'll build up a little base right around where I'm going to ultimately tie my my wing on to this fly. So I've taken my whiting tailing pack, and I've selected out some fibers of this Coq de Leon grizzly. I like this a lot for Callibaetis. You can see I've got a nice tight little compact tail. Might have a couple more fibers than I like for a tail. And I'll proportion that, and then I'm going to trade hands, and I'm going to trim that off right where that tail is going to tie in right behind the little goiter as we attempt to build up some structure around that goiter so I don't have the big hump in this fly. So I've got another biot. Again, I took this off the trailing edge of the feather, so this is the less substantial barb than those bigger barbs on the leading edge. Little less stiff, but a little finer. And so I've tied that in. Put just a touch of super glue on that. And then we'll wind this forward through the body. And again, I like this nice trim segmentation that we get from the trailing edge of the turkey feather. And I'll cross that right on top of the hook and then trim off the excess. So let me show you how I tie in a parachute style pattern. I'm going to again use my super fine. And I'll wind several wraps right back there for the thorax area. I'm going to prepare a feather like I showed you on the last pattern, taking off a few barbs off the underside of this. I'm tying it with the curve facing downward. Now, some fly tyers like the curve up, others like it down. It's a matter of personal preference. I've oftentimes tied my hackle fibers either way. So I've tied that in with the dubbing mix right in front. And I'm going to start this up, tie that right at the top of the thread base. And I'm going to wind each wind underneath the succeeding. And you can see me dip down underneath and pull that forward. And then I can give it a little tug and tighten that up. And then I'll take and cross just the stem of that feather with my thread. And I'll trim off the excess. So when I tie my whip finish, you can see I'm at an angle to the hook shank. I'm not right at 90 degrees. I'm trying to tie along with the direction of the hackle barbs, and you can see those just sweep right out of the way. So that's a little tip when you're tying off your parachutes. The other thing I did here that isn't immediately apparent, I've got a couple of barbs I'm going to pop out of there that didn't lie right where I want them too. The other thing I did by winding the hackle on with some dubbing in front of that wing is that dubbing is going to help press that hackle upward so it doesn't get tangled up in the head when you tie this off. And so let me spin this around in the vise so you can see this nice parachute pattern. I tend to use on a parachute a hackle that's right about the length of the body or just a touch longer. So it's just draping over the entire fly. And so that's our little Callibaetis parachute pattern. Excellent fly. As I mentioned earlier, I often fish this in tandem with a cripple. And so I've got the best of both worlds on the water at any given point in time. So I give the trout a choice. The final video in this Callibaetis Lifecycle series will be the spinner pattern. So tune into that one next. Thanks for watching.